Welcome to Reformed Thinking. We're glad you could join us for this session.
It's good to be here to get into the text together.
Today, we're doing something a little different. We're going to zoom in, really use a microscope on just 3 specific verses.
3.
We're turning our attention to Genesis chapter 19, verses 27 through 29. And if you know your Old Testament history, you know the context here is, well, it's heavy.
It's the morning after.
The morning after the complete and total destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah.
And it's a scene that I think we often just fly past.
We do. We focus on the action movie part the night before, the fire from the sky, the flight, the pillar of salt.
But the narrator makes us pause here for a reason. It's quiet.
The sun is coming up, and Abraham walks out to look at the horizon.
And that contrast is so jarring. You have this piece of a new day, the world waking up like it's any other Tuesday.
And then you have the absolute horror of what Abraham is seeing.
So our goal for this deep dive is to, in a sense, stand on that ridge right there with Abraham.
Yeah, to see what he sees.
And to move beyond just the spectacle of the disaster itself and really get a hold of the specific theology of judgment and mercy that's packed into these 3 little verses.
And we should be upfront about our lens here. We are coming at this text from a Reformed perspective.
We are. Which means we see history not as just a series of random events, but as the theater of God's judgments.
And Scripture itself is a unified whole.
That's right. So when we look at a text like this, we're seeing God's sovereignty on full display. We're seeing a God who is holy and a God who keeps his promises.
Okay, so let's set the stage physically. We start in verse 27. It says that Abraham got up early in the morning.
And even that detail is worth noting. He's not sleeping in.
No, he's not pulling the covers over his head and hoping it was all a bad dream.
He gets up with a purpose. And the text says he went to the place where he had stood before the Lord.
Let's unpack that. The place where he had stood. This isn't just a random viewpoint he likes. This is significant real estate.
It is. It connects us directly back to the previous chapter, Genesis 18.
This is the exact spot.
The precise geographic location where Abraham stood the day before and interceded for Sodom.
This is where that incredible dialogue happened, where he asked, "Shall not the judge of all the earth do right?"
The very place. He bargained, you'll remember. Started at 50 righteous people, then 45.
All the way down to 10, so he's returning to the scene of the prayer.
He is, and that single action tells us something about the posture of a believer.
What do you mean by posture?
Well, the Hebrew word used here for stood is amad.
Amad.
And it has a specific feel to it. It's not just hanging around or loitering. It's the posture of a servant waiting for a command from his master, or a priest ministering before God. It implies this attitude of active watchfulness.
So he's not there as a disaster tourist.
No.
He didn't bring his camera to gawk at the wreckage.
He's not a tourist of calamity. That's a great way to put it. He's a covenant servant. He's engaged in what you might call a holy anxiety, a watchfulness.
He poured his heart out to God the day before, and now he's coming back to see the answer.
He is. He wants to see how the king is ruled.
It makes me think of the watchman idea that we see later in the prophets, in Ezekiel.
That's a very strong connection.
Mm.
Ezekiel 33, the watchman sees the sword coming and is responsible for blowing the trumpet.
There's a responsibility there.
A huge one.
Right.
And Abraham is acting like that, like the head of a household or maybe like a church officer today. He's awake to the spiritual realities while the world around him is, still asleep.
That really challenges how we so often think about prayer today.
How so?
I feel like in the modern church, prayer can become this kind of emotional release valve. I'm stressed, so I pray to feel better, and then I just move on with my day.
That's very true. We treat it as therapeutic.
Yeah.
We just dump our anxieties and then walk away. But Abraham shows us that prayer is real engagement with the living God.
He expects an answer.
He expects God to act. And so he returns to the place of prayer to see the answer. If we pray for our nation or for our neighbors, do we actually look for the answer?
Or do we just check a box to make ourselves feel like we did something?
Right. Abraham returned to the spot. He wanted to know what the judge of all the earth had decided.
And what he sees. Well, that brings us to the next verse. Verse 28. And he looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah.
The verb for look down there is shakaf.
Shakaf.
It's not a casual glance. It means to look down from a height, but with deliberate, intense scrutiny. He's scanning the horizon. He's really looking.
And then he sees it. The smoke of the land went up like the smoke of a furnace.
This is the visual anchor of the whole passage.
Yeah.
And to really feel the force of this, we have to get a little technical with the Hebrew.
Okay.
The word for furnace is kibshan.
Kibshan. So is that like a fireplace? Or a campfire?
No, and that is a key distinction. This is not a cozy cooking fire. It's not a hearth where you'd warm your hand.
Okay, so what is it?
A kibshan was an industrial kiln.
An industrial kiln?
Yes. The kind used for smelting lime or firing pottery. We're talking about intense, suffocating heat. The kind of heat that chemically alters the very structure of whatever's inside it.
So the image isn't just a brush fire in the distance. This is more like industrial exhaust.
Think of a thick, dark, choking plume blotting out the morning sun. It suggests total, irreversible destruction, a picture of suffocation and finality.
That is a terrifying image, and it really brings us face to face with a theology of judgment that, let's be honest, a lot of modern Christianity tries very hard to avoid.
It completely refutes what we could call therapeutic Christianity.
Explain that.
Well, there's this pervasive idea of a harmless God, a God who just exists to affirm us and tell us we're okay, but who never actually judges, a God without wrath.
And this text just shatters that.
It destroys that idol. The outcry of Sodom, its sin, came up to God and God answered. The answer was fire.
It does sound harsh to our modern ears.
It does, but we have to hold this alongside our confessions. Think of the Westminster Confession of Faith.
Chapter 2, Section 1.
It describes God as most just and terrible in his judgments, hating all sin. We can't have a truly loving God if we don't also have a God who hates evil.
Right. If God looked at the wickedness of Sodom, the violence, the abuse, and just shrugged, he wouldn't be a good God.
He wouldn't be just. A judge who lets a murderer go free because he wants to be nice is not a good judge.
Yeah.
He's a corrupt one.
So this visual, this smoke, it serves a purpose then.
It does. In theology, we talk about the second use of the law.
To restrain wickedness.
Right. The law restrains evil by showing the consequences. This smoke is a visible sermon. The land itself becomes a witness.
A testimony.
It testifies that God's wrath is not just a metaphor. It has a historical footprint. It leaves a scar on the land.
So when Abraham looks at that smoke, he is seeing the physical proof that God is holy.
Yes, he's seeing that sin has a wage, and that wage is death. It's a visual sermon on the holiness of God.
Now, if the story stopped there, it would be incredibly bleak. Just smoke and ash.
It would be.
But then we get to verse 29, and this is the pivot point of the whole passage.
It is. The grammar itself does the heavy lifting here. The verse says, "So it was, when God destroyed the cities of the valley, God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out."
Okay, let's break down that sentence structure.
The main action of that sentence is not the destruction.
No, it's in a subordinate clause. When God destroyed, it's background information.
The main subject, the grammatical center of the whole thing is God. God destroyed, God remembered, God sent out.
Which means we can't just write this off as a freak natural disaster.
You can't. You'll hear people try to explain Sodom away as, oh, it was an earthquake or a subterranean gas explosion or just political collapse.
But the text won't let you do that.
No. It was a specific judicial act carried out by the judge of all the earth. God is the active agent from start to finish.
And the key verb in all of this seems to be remembered. God remembered Abraham. Now, what does that mean? Does it mean God forgot about them for a minute?
Right, like, oh, Lot. I almost forgot he was down there.
Yeah, exactly.
No, not at all. And this is a really crucial distinction to make. In the Bible, when it says God remembers, it doesn't mean he's recalling something from a faulty memory.
It's not about mental recall.
It's about a movement from thought to action based on a prior promise or relationship.
Can you give us another example of that?
Sure. Think of Noah in the ark. Genesis 8:1 says God remembered Noah. It didn't mean God had lost track of the ark in the storm.
No, of course not.
It meant the time had now come for God to act on his promise to Noah and make the waters recede.
Or in Exodus, when Israel is enslaved in Egypt, it says God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Same principle. It's the activation of covenant faithfulness. It's God moving to keep his word.
So when our text says God remembered Abraham, it means God is now acting based on the covenant relationship he has with Abraham.
Precisely. It is the execution of a standing agreement.
And here's where it gets really, really interesting for me. The text says God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out.
That is the shocking part of verse 29.
It is. Logically, you'd expect it to say God remembered Lot and sent Lot out.
Or maybe God saw that Lot was a righteous man, and so he sent Lot out.
But it doesn't say that at all. It anchors Lot's rescue entirely in the person of Abraham.
And right there, you have the doctrine of mediation.
Imputation and mediation, yeah, but in narrative form. Lot is not saved because of Lot.
Not at all. Lot is saved because of his connection to Abraham.
And let's be honest about Lot for a moment. We call him righteous Lot because 2 Peter calls him that. But if you just read the Genesis account, I mean, the man is a mess.
He is a deeply compromised figure. He chose to live in Sodom in the first place. He hesitated when the angels told him to run for his life.
He offered his daughters to a violent mob. He lingers.
He does. He lingers. So if salvation depended on Lot's moral performance or his spiritual zeal in that moment,
He would have been incinerated. He'd have been part of that smoke Abraham was watching.
he would have. So he is a picture of the believer who is saved, as Paul says, so as by fire.
And this, where the trajectory toward Christ becomes so clear you can't miss it. Abraham is acting here as a type of Christ, a mediator.
Explain what you mean by that. How is Abraham a type of Christ here?
Well, just think about the gospel. Why are believers saved? Is it because we're so inherently worthy?
No.
Is it because our moral performance is so impressive? Of course not. We are saved because God remembers Jesus Christ.
That is a powerful parallel.
At the heart of Reformed soteriology, you look at the Westminster Confession again, chapter 11 on justification.
It says we are accepted as righteous only for the righteousness of Christ imputed to us.
Imputed, credited to our account. So just as Lot was pulled out of the fire because of Abraham standing with God.
We are pulled out of the final judgment because of Christ's perfect standing with the Father.
But there is a huge difference, isn't there? Abraham isn't a perfect mediator.
That is the critical distinction. Abraham is a shadow, a pointer, but Christ is the substance.
Abraham could plead.
He could plead for mercy, yes. He could stand on the ridge and ask God to spare the city. But Abraham could not atone for the sin of that city.
He stood near the judgment. He watched it.
But he did not take the judgment upon himself.
And Christ did.
Christ entered the furnace. That's the difference. Jesus didn't just stand on a hill and watch the smoke of our judgment. He went into the fire on the cross. He absorbed the full wrath of God that was due to us.
So Christ's mediation is infinitely better than Abraham's.
Infinitely. But Abraham gives us the category to understand it. We are saved because of another. Our salvation is outside of ourselves.
I appreciate that, because it takes all the pressure off of us to be the hero of our own story. Lot was certainly not the hero of his.
Not even close. He was the object of the rescue, not the subject of the action.
And speaking of that rescue, let's look at the action itself, the sending out. The verse says God sent Lot out.
That Hebrew verb is shalach. And in this context, when you combine it with the earlier description of the angels literally grabbing his hands and his family's hands,
It implies force.
it implies expulsion, a forceful deliverance.
So this wasn't a polite invitation. It wasn't, hey, Lot, you chaps might want to consider heading out now.
No, it was practically a kidnapping for his own good. He had to be dragged to safety. The text makes it clear that if God hadn't used force, Lot would still be there. He would have stayed.
That sounds a whole lot like irresistible grace to me.
It was a very vivid illustration of it. Salvation is a rescue operation. It's not a self-help program.
We don't just wake up one morning and decide to save ourselves.
No, God has to intervene. He has to grab us by the hand and at times drag us out of the path of our own self-destruction. It shows God's sovereignty in salvation.
And it speaks to his providence, too.
Absolutely. The Westminster Confession, chapter 5, explains this so well. God orders all things. Just think about the sheer mechanics of this event.
He's orchestrating the geological or supernatural destruction of these cities.
While at the same time coordinating the precise evacuation of one tiny family.
The same hand that overthrows is the same hand that extracts.
It is. It's that paradox of judgment and mercy happening at the exact same moment, in the exact same event.
It's the dual nature of God's work in history. He preserves his church even while he judges the world. He does it with perfect timing and precision.
He really does.
So we have this intense theology packed into just these 3 verses. But this isn't a one-off event. This pattern, it shows up all over the Bible.
It's a canonical pattern. You see it again and again. God distinguishes, he preserves, and he brings his people out.
We see it with Noah. The whole world is judged.
But one family is preserved in the ark.
We see it in the Exodus. Egypt is judged with plagues.
And Israel's brought out.
We see it with Rahab and Jericho. The city walls fall.
But her house, marked by the scarlet cord, stands firm.
Yeah.
We even see it with Elijah being sustained through famine.
And the New Testament writers definitely pick up on this theme. You mentioned 2 Peter earlier.
Yes, 2 Peter chapter 2, verses 6 through 9. Peter uses Sodom and Gomorrah as his prime case study.
What does he say?
He says, if God turned those cities to ashes, as an example, and yet rescued righteous Lot, then, and this is the conclusion, the Lord knows how to rescue the godly from trials.
The Lord knows how. I find that so comforting.
It means God is competent. He's not confused. He knows how to make the distinction. He doesn't accidentally sweep away the righteous with the wicked. He knows how to manage history to ensure his people are kept safe.
Okay, so what does this all mean for us? For the person listening to this right now, let's talk about application.
We can look at this through the lens of the third use of the law, how this text guides our life of gratitude and obedience.
And for the believer, you'd have to say the very first application is gratitude.
Gratitude. While looking at a plume of smoke.
Yes, intense gratitude. Because when you, as a believer, look at that smoke rising like a furnace, you have to realize that is what I deserved.
That's the end result of my sin.
Being sent out, being rescued, it's not some badge of honor for my own righteousness. It's a miracle of sheer mercy.
And it should produce a kind of trembling gratitude, not arrogance or superiority.
We shouldn't look at the world and feel smug. We should look at the world and feel a sense of shock that we are not burning with it.
That's very well said. And that gratitude has to lead to something. It's not just a feeling.
No, it has to lead to separation.
You cannot love Sodom and also love the God who judged Sodom. The call for the Christian is to be distinct.
Lot's big mistake was getting too comfortable in the cities of the plain.
He pitched his tent towards Sodom. And we have to ask ourselves, are we doing that? Are we getting cozy with the very things that God hates?
It's a tough question because it's so easy to drift. Lot drifted.
And look where it got him. He lost everything except his own life.
Yeah.
The application is to be more like Abraham, distinct, separate, watchful on the ridge.
And there's also an application for intercession in there.
Absolutely. We're called to emulate Abraham's holy anxiety. We should be praying for our neighbors, our cities, our nations.
We shouldn't just retreat to our holy huddles and say, well, let the world burn.
Abraham stood before the Lord and pleaded. We are called to be priests in that way, standing in the gap. What about for the person listening who maybe isn't a believer or isn't sure what they believe?
For them, the smoke is a warning.
It's a warning against presumption. Think about it. The morning the fire fell, the sun rose on Sodom just like any other day.
People were buying and selling, eating and drinking, getting married.
They thought they had all the time in the world. They thought either God didn't exist or he didn't care or he wasn't watching.
But the morning after reveals that God is patient, yes, but he is not mocked.
There's a real urgency to it.
A huge urgency. If you're lingering in the plain, you are in mortal danger. The message of this text is to flee to the mediator. Flee to the greater Abraham, who is Jesus Christ.
It's a heavy text. There's no getting around that. But it is also so full of hope if you know where to look.
That's the beauty of it. It holds that tension perfectly. The horror of the smoke and the comfort of the covenant, side by side.
So to kind of pull it all together, we've stood with Abraham this morning. We've seen the smoke. We've learned that God is a consuming fire who hates sin.
But we've also seen that God remembers.
He remembers. And that is the anchor for our souls. The safety of the believer rests entirely on the fact that the Father remembers the Son.
It doesn't rest on our memory of God, which is weak and faulty.
It rests on God's perfect memory of his own covenant promises in Christ.
I think that's the central takeaway. We are safe not because we remember him, but because he remembers his Son.
Amen to that.
I want to leave all of you with one final thought to mull over as you go about your week. Picture Abraham standing on that ridge again. He's looking at the exact same valley that his nephew Lot looked at back in Genesis 13.
That's a great point.
Remember what Lot saw? He looked and he saw that it was well watered, like the garden of the Lord. Lot saw potential. He saw profit, pleasure, comfort.
He saw a good place to do business.
Now, years later, Abraham looks at that very same piece of land, and all he sees is smoke.
A stark, stark contrast.
So here's the question for you to consider. When you look at the world today, at your city, at our culture, at your career, whose eyes are you using? Do you see it with the eyes of Lot, lingering and loving it, seeing only what you can get out of it for yourself? Or do you see it with the eyes of Abraham, understanding its fragility, seeing it in light of God's coming judgment, and interceding for it?
That is the question to wrestle with.
Thanks for joining us for this session. We'll see you next time on Reformed Thinking.